Hello, family members. Hope you're having a nice day today. I want to talk to you about evil and how easily it can be overlooked. How very simple it is to just not see it and not understand that you're part of it when you are. The banality of evil is not a new phrase, obviously. It's a concept that has been discussed many, many times. But it is something where the specific tactics change, the specific rhetoric uses changes just enough for plausible deniability. And because of that, because it's always creating a moving target, you have to move along with it. You have to call it out constantly, which is annoying, but that's the human existence. It's a Sisyphean task. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, sorry. But it's a necessary one. Sarah McBride, a congresswoman who happens to be a transgender woman, has been taking a lot of flack in queer spaces for saying that Democrats need to compromise on trans rights. And that criticism often doesn't go far enough, because you cannot compromise on human rights, any human rights, women's rights, men's rights, white people, black people, every person's rights. Everybody deserves dignity and human rights. And if you're saying, well, this group should maybe just compromise for now, no. That is a very slippery slope. You will not like where you end up at the end of that. No. But it's not even that. Inaction right now, when there is active harm being done in so many places in the world, on so many levels, thinking you would just be checked out, not pay attention, that's an evil. That is you siding with evil. That is you enabling evil to just go about its business and do what it wants to do. But it's not just pure apathy or pure ignorance. It's people who believe that they have a considered opinion and don't. I'm going to call myself out on this. After the initial October Hamas attack, almost 2 years, like a year and a half ago or whatever, for the first few months, I didn't really delve into the discourse. I didn't feel like I knew enough to warrant having a strong opinion. And so I didn't really weigh in on it, because I felt like it was something that was too complicated to understand, and that delving into it would be too onerous a task to expect. And it wasn't until some months later, when one of my favorite YouTubers made a very comprehensive video, that I realized, oh, this isn't complicated. This is simple. This is people who are being, murdered in attempt to wipe them out, to displace them, to either get them out of a territory or just dead or whatever by an occupying force that doesn't have any right to their land. And even if they did have a right to their land, what they're doing is very gleefully, sadistically, immorally genocidal. Like if you actually listen to Israelis who are for the war, it's eye-opening, because there are people who will make no bones about the fact that they want to see every single person in Gaza, every single Palestinian in Gaza, man, woman, and child, murdered. And they don't care if it's done in a brutal or horrific way. In fact, they might even cheer it on. And obviously, that is not everyone in Israel. But there's enough of them that their right-wing government that is enacting these horrible acts is fully empowered to continue doing that. And that's just, it's frustrating, because it would not be hard for anyone who has a broad public platform in the United States, the president, so to really explain that simply in a way that people would understand. It shouldn't be impossible to have an electorate in this country that isn't fully aware of that. But there's not a will for that to happen. The people who have those levers of power want people to stay inert. They don't want the political inertia that really making that clear would create. And so just this idea that I let myself buy into, that something was too complicated to understand and I was going to need to invest a lot of time and energy in it, that alone was me taking an evil action. Because if I had taken the time to really see what was being done, what people were saying, I wouldn't have thought that. But I gave myself an excuse not to even try to look into it by saying, oh, it's a lot and there's so much going on right now, I can't, I will deal with that later. And I regret that. I feel bad that that was something that I did. But I do feel like I learned something from it, and that is valuable to me, at least, too. If you can't call yourself out, you're never going to be able to call other people out. So call yourself out if you notice yourself doing something that you know isn't right, Like right now, if you haven't been actively reaching out to your queer and minority friends and family members and giving them support, you're, maybe contributing to them feeling alone and isolated. And maybe that is an evil. But if you notice it and you call yourself out on it, then you can do better. So we have to be able to call ourselves out. We have to be able to see, oh, that is something that I'm doing or I have done, and I don't have to do that anymore. I can do better, you know? So another one I definitely see a lot of is people feeling like, you know, well, why should we care about this? You know, we got to take care of our own. And the sad thing about that is it's just logically wrong. I mean, you think you can turtle up and your community isn't at high risk of being targeted, and you can let other communities be sacrificed to maintain your security, but they're never going to stop. You'll come across somewhere where there'll be a line you can't cross, or where they've decided that you're not good enough and that you are now the other. And you'll never know where that's going to come from. It could be anything, you know? Not to mention that one of the minority groups that are being uniquely targeted right now are disabled people who depend on things like Social Security and, you know, regulations to enforce compliance just so that, you know, they can access services they need and all of that. All of that is under unique attack, and every single person on earth is but a hair's breadth away from becoming disabled. You know, you could be driving to work tomorrow morning and get in a car accident, and your whole life will be completely changed forever. And suddenly you think you're not at risk for persecution or oppression or targeting by our, you know, increasingly bold right-wing, I don't even know what to call them anymore, like cabal. Cabal is the right word, I think, in a lot of ways, but it's got some pretty loaded connotations, so maybe I should avoid that. Anyway, the president and his people are coming for disabled people. And that could be you tomorrow, even if you're not today. And so maybe you ought to think about that. Maybe you ought to think that there's no line they won't cross. We are talking about people. We're talking about, for example, Elon Musk, who literally has more money than anyone, who has a lot of power and influence in a lot of countries and a lot of industries, and nothing is enough for him. Nothing. There's nothing that he can get that's going to be enough. He's always going to want more. They're always going to want more control. They're always going to want to find another other to exploit. You know, in the musical Wicked, that happens. You have the wizard, spoilers, using animals as a scapegoat, as a way of unifying and strengthening the, you know, the world for everybody else. But the thing is, once they're fully oppressed, once they're fully under thumb, they're not a very good boogeyman anymore. So who's going to be the next boogeyman? You know, there's always going to be a need for a scapegoat in a fascist system like that. You know, it's always going to come back to, we need an other to vilify and dehumanize. At least one, preferably many. And they're all going to be weak fools who are also somehow puppet strings pulling masters of everything, you know, because they're a magical, imagined version of whatever other they're talking about. You know, when most transphobic people, non-trans affirming people, talk about especially trans women, they do so in a way that is very perplexing. Because what they're talking about isn't trans women, they're talking about cis men pretending to be trans, which is not the same thing as trans women at all. But I guess that apparent contradiction is part of the point. You know, part of this is just about power. It's about people who want power and are willing to do whatever they can to get it. And one of the surest ways for someone to get power is to convince everyone else that they got better things to do and just let them take care of stuff. Let me do your thinking for you. I'm so terrified for myself and for people like me, you know. There right now are people who are pushing for bills about like haircuts, you know, people not having gender appropriate haircuts, which is so ridiculous and granular, but it's out there. And I'm sitting here like, well, what if it's like, you know, medically necessary? Are you going to give me a bad time over that? I just saw a story earlier today about a cis woman who just happens to be a quite tall woman. Like, I think she said about 6'4" or something like that. And she went to the bathroom at her own work. And there was, you know, it's like a bathroom that customers and both workers use. And a customer's husband started screaming into the bathroom and yelling at her and abusing her and stuff because he assumed she was trans. But she's not. And if she was, that wouldn't be appropriate anyway. Because, I mean, even if he didn't care about harassing a trans woman, how did he know there wasn't any other women in that bathroom? You know, he could have been like terrifying who knows how many cis women in order to abuse one trans woman. That's okay. You can abuse as many cis women as you want in the hopes of maybe occasionally harassing a trans person. That's weird. I thought all of this was about protecting women. Anyway. It's complicity and apathy that is ruining our country right now. And it's not an indeliberate thing. The right wing has been pretty upfront about wanting to dismantle education and about being, you know, vilifying the educated, vilifying people who are experts and actually know what they're talking about. And this is not something that started with Trump, okay? Like, do you not remember George Bush? The whole George Bush presidency was just completely like fueled on this anti-intellectual energy. Well, the kids who were growing up in that time are now the ones that are young men voting for Trump too, by the way, because they grew up in an environment that told them that being smart was stupid, uncool, and that experts didn't know what the heck that they were talking about. And if you do your own research, then you're automatically going to know way more than anybody else that's got any sort of official capacity. It's just, whoo, boy, it's wild. You know, people like to think that they would be the ones who would hide the Franks instead of being the guy who gave the Franks name and location in order to save himself. But I don't think that's true for most people. I think most people are going to be the ones who are going to be like, I got to save myself. And the thing is, if you've got a gun to your head, that's one thing. But I think a lot of us are trying to save ourselves in the sense that it's a lot mentally to really follow what's going on in this country and around the world. And you think the only thing that you can do is just check out to survive. And I want to tell you that's not true. I literally find the news triggering. I've made a video about this before, but that was a while ago. The other night, when my parents were still here, my dad was watching the news, and the story about the Israelis breaking the ceasefire was on the news. And I mean, just instantly, tears. I was sobbing, and it took a long time for me to be able to come back from that. Like, I had to go and like isolate myself and calm down. Like, I had an overwhelming, pathological, unhealthy reaction to the news. But I am still able to stay informed, and the way that you do that is you learn what sources you can get information from that you can trust, that are not that direct, are not that blunt. I find finding news out from like comedians or commentators can be a lot easier because there's a detachment, so it doesn't feel as triggering to me. I mean, there's a big difference between seeing that on the news presented the way it was. I'm sorry, it's really upsetting to me even now. And having someone calmly discuss that and the implications of it in a larger intellectual discussion. Obviously, that wouldn't be a good example of one that would work well with comedy. Economic issues are pretty good for comedy, that I will say. But the other thing that I've learned is you might occasionally need to check out for a while. And that's fine. I've had to do that. When things get to be too overwhelming, you might take a few weeks or even a few months off. And the good thing for you is anything that's really important that happened in that time frame, you will be able to find out about when you come back, because people will still be discussing it and the implications of it. If you dig deep enough, especially. So, a problem you'll see a lot of times is people want to tell a story too soon. They'll tell the story of an exciting crime just after it's ended, but they don't necessarily realize that there's going to be a lot of context that comes out about that crime that changes everyone's view about it within the next few weeks. And so oftentimes it can be better to wait until you have more information before you start really discussing something or thinking about something or forming an opinion on it. And there are some certain things that are more time sensitive, more urgent than others. But it's possible to protect yourself and stay informed. And you have to. You absolutely have to. Because right now, any apathy Any ignorance that you have is being weaponized against you and marginalized people. Oh my gosh, Kimmy's like, I need to come out. All right, you're coming with this time. I know the production quality on my videos is not great, but one does what one must. That's all I can say. Oh, goodness, Dobby. That's the neighbor's dog. All right. So anyway. Meow indeed. Let's get back to what we were talking about after this location change. Yes, Leslie. I know. Me too. Come here. All you have to do to get them to let you alone is kiss them. And they're like, no, she came back for more. I'm surprised. All right, this is very distracting. This is why I don't normally film out here. But that's the point in a lot of ways, is you do need distractions, but you can't let yourself be fully distracted by them either. You have to be able to go back and find that train of thought even after distractions have literally pulled you to another location. I, right now, have a lot of concern about Democrats, centrists, and left-leaning people who think the thing to do to defeat the rise of this fascist extremist right is to go more right and try to pick up people who traditionally would be Republicans that are like unimpressed with the MAGA gang. And that is so wrong-headed that it just like blows my mind. I'm not even joking. I can't take it. I'm like, that is the exact opposite of the message you should have been taking. Yay. Okay. The reason why enough people didn't come out and vote for Biden that he won was because of what he was doing or not doing to help Gaza. And instead of going, you know, we should have listened to our electorate that were telling us that they wouldn't be able to vote for us in good conscience if we didn't change our position and our actions on this. Instead of saying, well, we didn't listen to them, and then they didn't vote, and we lost, they go, we should not listen to them even harder. Let's do more to alienate these people. How is that the takeaway? I don't get it. It's so wrong-headed. And so the idea that the thing to do is respectability politics or, compromise more with the right is deadly. It's deadly. It's going to kill people. It's already killing people. I mean, when you deny trans existence, trans people feel like there's no future. Things are never going to get better. And then they die. It's just what happens. Maybe they put themselves in a dangerous situation. Maybe they, decide to end their life themselves. It doesn't matter. It just happens. And it also empowers people to do things like they did to Brandon Tina. And though he wasn't trans, Matthew Shepard is another example too. That's what normalizing hatred leads to. That's what not actively opposing it leads to. It empowers the ones who want to do wrong and weakens the ones who need the most protection. And we can simply just do better than that. And I want us to do better than that. And I'd like to believe that's what's going to happen. But if ordinary people can't see the own evils that they do, we're never going to be able to stop the people who are more overt about their evil intent. Well, family members, I probably ought to wrap this up. Although now Dobby stopped barking, so. Kimmy, you want to say hi to the peoples? Kimmy, you gonna hide under table? No, not my Kimmy. Oh gosh, I'm sorry for showing you my thighs. But hey, look, there's my daddy's broccoli patch right there. And an osprey, who's beautiful, and I love her. Take care of yourselves, family members. And take care of the people in your community who are most at risk. Do not compromise on rights. That's all I can say.